2014 is when I started investing. It took me about 7 years for me to hit the first crore milestone.
Minus to zero was 5 years and zero to a crore was 4 years.
My parents put some lump sum money into mutual fund, which compounded over 20-year period. And when I went to college, there was no education loan need to be taken.
The one thing that I never did for sure is FDs. Eventually ended up sticking to mutual funds. Welcome to Money Skills by Scripbox. One of the most repetitive questions that we get is how to reach that first 1 crore milestone. And today we have three of us talking about how we were able to make it. How long did it take you to achieve the first milestone of a crore?
2014 is when I sort of started investing, and it took me about 7 years for me to hit the first crore milestone.
It took me around 7 to 8 years to achieve this crore milestone.
So for me, it is longer. So minus to zero was 5 years and zero to a crore was 4 years. So post-COVID is where I started investing. What were the key investment instruments that contributed to your first milestone?
So mine is predominantly mutual funds, and because I knew about mutual fund because when I was born, my parents put some lump sum money into mutual fund, which compounded over 20-year period. And when I went to college, there was no education loan need to be taken, where the car was. With that, I knew about mutual fund is like a solid product, and that is what predominantly 80% of my corpus when I achieved was also with mutual funds. Maybe for tax saving purpose or other purpose, I've used other government schemes, but primary product is still mutual funds.
So yeah, similar to what you said, right? Which is mutual funds has predominantly been my instrument towards hitting the 1 crore. So I kind of at some point started doing some SIP into direct equity, into US direct equity specifically, because there's a LRS restriction of about, I think, 7.5 lakhs, beyond which you have to pay a TCS of 10%. I had about close to about 10 to 20% allocation towards US direct equity, and the remaining within mutual funds as a product. Within that, of course, there's debt and other parts that happens within mutual funds, but I have not dabbled much into Indian equity.
I think in my first job, I was introduced to LIC policy. And then, of course, and then later my bank made me buy an ULIP. After that, when I happened to join for my second job, I happened to close those things and then take the losses, but still for the tax saving purposes started in ELSS. The one thing that I never did for sure is FDs. Eventually ended up sticking to mutual funds and few recommendations from financial advisors for asset allocations.
Yeah, so what was your asset allocation like prior to hitting the 1 crore target, during the 1 crore target?
Yeah, so I started with predominantly equity first, maybe until reaching that 10-20 lakhs. It was all equity. Then there is some risk averseness kicked in when the corpus was growing. So that is when I started adding more and more debts also to it. So my allocation stayed around 50 to 60% into equity, 10% into debt, 10% into gold, probably remaining 30% into debt predominantly. That is when I was reaching that 1 crore barrier. As the corpus is going, some of the risk averseness is keep reducing.
I think same. So equity is what I sort of started with, also heavily into. I was not interested in debt initially, and I think maybe close to about 30-35 lakhs is when I started adding more debt into my portfolio. That's when also, like, having an emergency fund is also going to be predominantly debt, right? So plus these were also early times when I was thinking of buying a house, and keeping some money aside for liquidity was of importance to us. And I think I had a target of just about having 10 lakhs in debt, just kept there safe. Along with that, equity was there, debt was there, and then I also had like US equity in mutual funds that went in. Eventually, when we were closer to pandemic, I think I had somewhere close to about 40% just sitting in debt. I kind of increased the debt allocation because I knew the down payment is going to be something that I don't want to like I don't want to rely too much on the loan part. So, but what happened? There was a decision that we took internally that we will defer the house purchase and maybe try to aggressively asset allocate at that time. So most of the debt shifted into equity on a gradual sort of manner, and that definitely helped boost the movement towards the 1 crore portfolio. Add to that the US equities also that I kind of explored separately. Maybe I had about I think I increased my exposure to about close to 20 lakhs in US equity. And what you don't notice is it's not just that particular investment compounding, but it's also the depreciation rate that we have, because I think our currency depreciates close to an average of about 4% every year if I just look at the last 5-year data. And that's all just sort of bonus returns over and above the actual script improving. So I do have about 5% allocation to gold, but I have not doubled down on gold as much. It's there, but it's predominantly these three asset classes that really helped me in the journey.
The first 5 years, buying more insurances first for myself before starting investing, because I wanted to be sure that whether I exist, not exist, the debt is settled down. So I went on getting term insurance, double insuring myself with health insurances and all of those things when I started, till it reached like 10-15 lakhs one. And then I stopped equities and moved completely on mutual funds, but still equities. The minute that I somewhere saw my portfolio size was 50 lakhs or so, I felt good about it, but also there was a fear coming up in my mind. The minute the 50 lakhs came into picture, I spent so much energy, effort to go through a lot of sacrifices to get there. I don't want to see this drop by 70% or 80% if the market crashes for some reason. Because of that reason, asset allocation as a concept, I started believing in, read more about it, and then started including more of debts, gold, and international equities. So my asset allocation kept changing based on the corpus. But after 50 lakhs, I think it stabilized. Like I right now stand at 80% on equities, both stocks and mutual fund put together, and 10% on gold, 10% on debt.
Did you do SIP or lump sum to reach this 1 crore corpus?
It's predominantly been SIP for me. Even when it came to the direct equity side of things, I'd just been like I had in my mind this much money will go into these 3 stocks if required. And I think initially I would have started with a 5K SIP, and it was going purely into tax saving funds. This is like 10 years back. Once I saw that the returns were fairly healthy is when I started like increasing it to maybe about 10 to 15,000 rupees. After that, I got into the habit of increasing my SIPs at least by 10% and try to match it as close as possible to the annual salary increment that I could get. But of course, it's not always been possible because life circumstances, more people, we have like a larger family. The lifestyle expenses are also going up. But I think at some point my SIPs would have hit close to about 65,000. But again, it could have been better, but I've just been a bit more conservative maybe sometimes.
So mine was predominantly SIP only. Probably 80% of the corpus was built through SIPs only. I started with probably 25,000 a month, and then slowly increasing as the salary was increasing. I've kept increasing my SIPs as well. I've structured in a way I'll do separate SIP for say retirement, separate SIP for child's education, child's college education. So that is how I've structured it, and I just kept increasing, kept doing SIPs. Probably I'll try to avoid timing the market as much as possible, but still somehow I'll put maybe when there is a good opportunity, I'll pump in some money, maybe 1 or 2 lakh into equities. That is what I do. But SIP is what primary driver.
When I started investing, it was primarily lump sum. Because I thought I can time the market in every February when the government announces budget. There will be a crash happening and I can put in money in ELSS. That is how I thought. But it practically didn't happen that way. So initially for the first 2-3 years, I only participated in ELSS 1.2 lakhs to save the tax. So I did only lump sums during that time. And then I also tried using, when the NPS was introduced, I was trying to time the NPS also in the same method. But I later realized that waiting is useless. I'm just losing out on time. Then from 10,000 rupees, when the COVID hit, when there was surplus available to me after I paid off all the debts, there was an EMI which was running. As soon as the EMI got ended, my EMI was close to 75,000 rupees. As soon as the EMI got ended, that 75,000 rupees was available to me right now. And that became a practice because I'm used to not seeing that 75,000 rupees in my bank account anyway. That practice came in, and that practice just EMI shifted into SIP. That 75,000 rupees SIP I thought was a great number and good for me to do. And even whenever I had a company bonus and stuff like that, I either went paying for a car or something. Then one fine year, I invested all my bonus into as a lump sum. That became like a SIP contribution plus lump sum contribution. So yearly once I do a lump sum, but every month there was a SIP. But later, when I did a financial planning exercise, this was all without doing financial planning exercise, right? Later, when I did a financial planning exercise, I realized that the 75,000 rupees is not enough for me to reach my final number. And then I revised my SIP to a lakh or slowly introduce more than a lakh or something like that. So it was both SIP and lump sum, primarily SIP, here and there lump sum, wherever there's money extra popping up. Maybe this is the time for us to tell what is our current SIPs running.
Mine is around 1.5 lakh a month.
So until my marriage, which happened few months back, I was running on 1.5 lakhs SIP.
Of course, it's been a long journey and we would have definitely made financial mistakes on the way. What mistakes would you have done financially, and what do you do to recover from that?
There are few mistakes which is never recovered also. I started off with LIC. I think I had a yearly premium of 40,000 rupees or so. Then I started an ULIP policy with a monthly commitment of 20,000 rupees or so. This was like, I'm talking about 10 years back. And then later, thinking that 75,000 rupees is more than enough for my all my financial aspirations or lifestyle that I have, without doing a financial planning or goal planning exercise. And then later realizing that for my aspirations or lifestyle that I would like to have, it'll need at least 2 lakh rupees a month to be put in SIP. Or some of the mistakes that I went through. The mistake that I have never recovered is putting your money in, putting close to 2 to 3 lakhs rupees on cryptocurrencies just because you wanted to hold it in your portfolio.
I had a couple of ULIPs that I used to fund. This is 10 years back, about 50,000 each, and that lump sum of about a lakh going out to these ULIP policies was painful. But in my head, it was like, great, I'm investing. Right, this is good. Until the moment you put down in the Excel sheet to see the actual for these policies, right? But I think since then, my mistakes have been mostly mistakes of omission rather than mistakes of commission, which means like stop investing for a period of time rather than like picking an incorrect script.
How do you balance lifestyle expenses with long-term goals?
So to me, at least what I try to do is keeping about 40% of my salary kept aside for my investments, and the remaining 60%, maybe keep at least about 5% for charity and such, and the remaining would be for lifestyle expenses. Like how I do SIPs, I have also like fairly small number, but like some SIP that goes into a couple of philanthropic foundations that I invest in. And this has been a very tricky part because the lifestyle expense inflation kind of goes in a different trajectory altogether. We say 5%, but once you have a kid, and especially if you have a home loan to pay, your education expenses are like at the tune of 15%, right? If you look at the inflation, it's a struggle. It's not easy to keep that balance, but I try to keep the equation as income minus savings equal to expenses, but not always successful.
So I haven't taken a house loan yet, so there is the leeway to spend for lifestyle expenses and took any big impact. I try to do at least 50% into savings and 50% for the expenses yet. But of course, the inflation is keep increasing, and back of my mind, purchasing house and building enough coppers to do that is always there as well.
The decision that I made early on in life gave me a little bit of leeway to have a lifestyle and experience life. After you do the financial plan, you come to know that, okay, you have to put so much money. Let's say a particular reason, for some particular reason, you are not able to put that SIP month. Then you do a catch up later. but within the same year. If you try to postpone it to the next year, then the cycle goes out. Your lifestyle also changes next year. So you don't know what is happening then.
Did you feel discouraged and consider pausing investments?
Not exactly. Maybe some, like, say, seeing news about market is overvalued. There is going to be a market crash. Always gives a distraction, as well as seeing new fancy products where that is also giving a kind of FOMO where maybe that is better than this. I try to avoid as much as possible.
How many times did you disturb your SIP?
Probably 2 times in the over the journey of last 7-8 years, where buying a car and while marriage for 3-4 months of passing the SIP happened. After that, last 5 years, there is SIP is just going out, and I don't try to disturb.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, like post the getting a home loan is where I had to stop the SIP. And the way I look at this is of course talking to some other friends of mine, looking at your home loan as a debt product. So unless you got a debt instrument out there that can beat 8.85% from a return point of view, there might not be much point in investing into debt per se. So right now my priority is just to close out on the home loan and get to a stage at least where I can start looking at coming back to the markets and coming back to investing. Yeah, I mean, I believe in the markets. Even if the market is tanking, it's not that there is fear. It's about where do I redirect the investments to. That is how I look at it. It's an opportunity rather than like a loss.
Since I started off with an EMI and then converted into an SIP, it didn't hurt when you were not having an SIP before. The minute you started having an SIP and you saw your wealth growing on month-on-month basis, and passing SIP for a few months hurts you. Like that hurt feeling suddenly has popped in, right? I mean, how I see this is, I usually have SIPs for specific goals. Recently, I passed like 4 months of SIP during my wedding. Even then, I didn't pass the SIP for my niece I was running. I only passed for my retirement. There is an emotional connect that you make with an SIP number and the goal. So even though I wanted to stop a particular SIP for reason, there are certain emotions which hold you more and not allow you to pass that SIPs. And I went through that.
Do you primarily focus on growing the income or purely savings and investing to achieve the financial goals?
So when I started my investment journey, right, as I started seeing success, or rather like decent growth with my mutual fund investments, there was a time that I must say, maybe it was 2014, somewhere close to about 2016, where I thought I figured this out. I keep hearing friends talking about their multi-bagger picks and such. So I opened up an account and I can start investing into some script. And what I've realized is that I think except for one, that everything else tanked. I would have deployed maybe about 3 to 4 lakh rupees across those 4 scripts. Very like I was just starting out. And what's more important was the sheer amount of effort and time that is needed to keep your hypothesis, like validating your hypothesis of buying these stocks, where they're right in the first place. What is changing in the macro climate? I just realized I didn't have the time. And whatever beliefs that I held true when I bought these stocks, they would not be true maybe subsequently. That was my aha moment, was forget the whole optimization of finding the best stock or finding the best mutual fund. You can get much more gains from just improving your investing corpus, right? How much money that is going in every month. And so yeah, figure out what you can do best and invest time into the skills, like developing your skills and getting up the career ladder. That's where my focus went to.
My belief is when you're too young, it's better to focus more time on your career. And career growth is going to be 20%, 30%, 50%, sometimes 100% over year on year. Market can never beat that consistently over years, and there can also be drops. I don't see a career drop. I don't think so. Majority of the people would have gone from 10 lakhs to 15 lakhs and then came again to 9 lakhs, right? That's not really going to, majorly not going to happen for most of the people. So when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, I currently believe that it's better time and effort invested in career and family, rather than trying to optimize that 2-3% that you will get more from a stock when you yourself handle versus somebody else is handling it for you. Now that 1 crore is milestone met, what comes after it? What is the strategy? What are you guys up to?
The first immediate goal would be to buy a house. In Bangalore, a decent house should at least minimum cost 2.5 crore. I would take that investment probably within the next 5 years. After that, the kids' education. We don't know whether kids would like to study abroad or India. So we need a large enough corpus to be ready for kids' education. And then early retirement needs a large corpus as well. So those are the goals.
Yeah, so for me, first priority is closing down on the home loan, at least to getting to a place where it is some space where I can get some money out for investments. After that, I think kids education is something that you've mentioned, which is also something that I'm looking at. I'm not looking at least education abroad for now, and clearly we are maybe as of current rates, at least the colleges that we are looking at, to the tune of about 40 lakhs is what I would see as annual fees. So like inflation adjusted amount when he's going to turn 20 is what I should be, when he's going to turn 18 is what I should be looking at. And of course the retirement number is a number that keeps changing. I don't know at this stage, given all the other priorities that has to happen beforehand, where the final number is going to reach. But 7 crores is what I had in my mind when I had done, after the initial financial plan was drawn out, plus when the kid was born and when I started seeing the inflation kind of going up. That's the number that I had in mind. But at this moment, it's a moving target. I hope it stops.
I think it's good to have a conversation when you had the first 1 crore here, but when you look at the reality of how much you really want to achieve in the time of retirement, this 1 crore looks like very small number, right? Just that I got married. This is the first discussion that's happening in the family right now, right? What is your lifestyle that you want to live? What is the lifestyle that we want to live? And how much will it take? For example, and in my calculation, it's like, if you want to really have a wealth created for your generation so that they can do from the day one what they wanted to do, it's nothing less than 25 crores as of now. When you look at 1 crore out of the 25 crore whole, this looks like very, very minuscule. And I think the next goal will be is to how to move from here to 5 crores.
I think bare minimum $1 million, which is like 7 to 8 crore, would be a minimum amount to do retire early in a metro city like Bangalore.
We hope that stays as such before it decides to jump.
Looking at current market conditions, do you think achieving a 1 crore corpus is easier or harder today compared to when you started?
I think when we look at investing, we have to be agnostic of market and just with the news just coming around, market is going to crash, or market is just at all-time high. Delaying the start is where the biggest mistake will be.
So at least the way I look at this, our GDP growth has been pretty strong. Inflation is also controlled. That means the earlier you invest and participate in the market movement, you can definitely ride on that particular growth. So no matter when you're starting, the last 3 years, last 10 years, last 20 years, if you take a different spans, you'll see that growth has always been, of course there are dips, of course there are market crashes that happen, but markets have also rebounded. So if you believe in the country's growth, for sure, there's no bad time.
When I started, my salary was 2.5 lakhs. Most people, even in today's IT world, is 3.5 lakhs. For them, looking at 1 crore looks like a huge number and it's hard to achieve, right? But the reality of life is like, when you mature towards a career, you are getting closer towards the pay scale, which can afford. But the thing is, your thought process towards saving also has to increase towards, okay, this is not going to be lasting for long. I will definitely be outdated in 10 years from now. And there are 20-year kids right now making 1 crore rupees with YouTube easily. Maybe it is easy for some people. Maybe it is harder for people who are starting. But the thing is, we all have to retire. We all have to go through that path. In that context, I would say that whether it is 1 crore or any number that we take, first knowing that number, how much we need, and making some smaller steps towards that progress makes it more important than evaluating whether it's easy to achieve or hard to achieve.
For someone just starting, recommend the first step. What would the first steps be toward building a 1 crore corpus?
For somebody starting, considering that they are young, like in their 20s, I would ask them to make their foundation stronger, like get their insurance, health insurance. If they have dependents, get their term insurance. And then get your first 3 months of salary saved. It doesn't matter which instrument, saving bank, bonds, mutual funds, whatever it is. But get that first 3 to 6 months of your salary saved. Then get into figuring out, do you have any debts? Does your parents have any debt? Figure out a wait mechanism or negotiate a payout period for that. Then step into short-term goals. What is your immediate need? Do you want to own a bike for your commute? Do you have a wedding coming up? Save for that. once you know, then it is easier to pick which instrument that you want to invest in. If it is going to be like 3 to 5 years, you definitely have to put it in either FD or debt mutual funds only. Let's say 5 years or beyond, 7 years and above, then you have an option to choose between mutual funds and stocks. Having a plan in place will be the first step that I would say is required.
Yeah, I think for me, the first big question is, do you have dependents or not? That'll determine what would your emergency fund be like. Set your emergency fund pace, just start with a 5,000 rupee SIP or a 10,000 rupee SIP. And I think if you look at the math also, like just I think a 20,000 rupees SIP with a growth expectation of 12%, and if you're doing an annual SIP increment of about 15% annually, if you're just increasing a SIP amount by 15%, will easily get you to close to a crore in 10 years. So these are all easily doable. It just needs discipline, and eventually the belief will push you towards creating the plan and the way forward.
And also maybe avoiding the FOMO and all these new fancy products that is coming and who are like promising very good returns. Say someone says guaranteed 15%, 20% return. We shouldn't get into those products, and just finding a right advisor is a good start.